Greetings everyone, how are you? I am Akansha and today we will be studying Psychology from class 12th textbook. I hope you are doing well and I hope your CUET preparation is going well as well. So today we will be studying the unit 1st of Psychology 12th textbook, that is individual variations. Now if we look at what's written here, individual variations are common within and across all species. Variations add color and beauty to nature. What are individual variations? Variations means how you and me are different from each other, how each object is different from one another. If you look at our lives, if every day when you go to school, every day becomes the same. There is no variation, there is no new thing happening in your school, there are no new activities happening. Of course, your life will turn out to be monotonous and dull. So for this, variations, new things, something new is very important in parts of our life. In the same manner, variability is a fact of nature and individuals are no exceptions. They vary in terms of physical characteristics such as height, weight, strength and hair color. Like you and your friend may vary in terms of your height, in terms of your the length of your hair color, in terms of your complexion. And so they also vary along psychological dimensions, means you're either you're intelligent or you're dull, you're dominant or you're submissive, or you're creative or you're not so creative. The list of variations can be endless. Different traits can exist in varying degrees in an individual. In the sense, each one of us is unique, as psychology exemplifies a typical combination of various traits. The question which you may like to pose is how and why people differ. This is in fact the subject matter of the study of individual differences. We are going to study why you and your friends differ from each other and in what aspects, and how you can assess it, and what are the methods to do so. Understanding individual differences. Now the nature of individual differences. For psychologists, individual differences refer to distinctiveness and variations among people's characteristics and behavior patterns. While many psychologists believe that our behaviors are influenced by our personal traits, some others hold the view that our behaviors are influenced more by situational factors. So the psychologists, they have two viewpoints regarding this, that why do people behave, why is one individual different from another individual. One group of psychologists, they believe that our behavior is influenced by personal traits. Personal trait means our genetics, what we have inherited from our forefathers, from our parents. And the second group of psychologists believe that our behaviors are influenced by situational factors. Now we are going to understand this further from here, situationalism. What does situationism means? First we are going to look at the definition which is given. This latter view is known as situationism, which states that situations and circumstances in which one is placed and influence one's behavior. A person who is generally aggressive may behave in a submissive manner in the presence of his or her top boss. Sometimes the situational influences are so powerful that individuals with differing personality traits respond to them in almost the same ways. The situationist perspective views human behavior relatively more as a result of influence of external factors. Now, situationism means that how the situation, how the objects around you, how the people around you, basically how the environment is influencing your behavior at a particular moment of time. If we take an example, for instance, apart from the example that's given here, you take the example of a student. So a student in a school environment will behave submissively in front of his teachers, but the same student, when he's at home, in front of his younger brother, he will try to be dominated. So this is how we can see that how the environment and how the people around him is changing the behavior of that same individual. So this is known as situationalism. Situation, how the situation is determining the behavior of the individual and how that is resulting in a change, in a variation in his behavior. Now, assessment of psychological attributes. What do you mean by assessment? Assessment is basically means measuring what are the psychological attributes that you possess. Assessment is the first step in understanding psychological attribute. Assessment refers to the measurement of psychological attributes of individuals and their evaluation, often using multiple methods in terms of certain standards of comparison. Any attribute will be said to exist in a person only if it can be measured by scientific procedures. So, in order to assess, psychologists take the help of scientific methods, and a person is said to have those traits, those attributes only and only if that they can be verified by scientific methods, if there are certain objective proofs of that. Like for instance, Harish is dominant. How can you say that Harish is dominant? They have a reason for it. We are referring to the degree of dominance in Harish. This statement is based on our own assessment of dominance in him. Our assessment, okay, so dominance of him, that maybe I have observed Harish dominating his younger brother. That's why I've come to the conclusion that Harish is dominant. Okay, so we need a reason so that we can infer a certain kind of attribute to a certain individual. Our assessment may be informal or formal. So the assessment can be of two kinds. Just like how tests are of two kinds, we have formal and we have informal assessment. Informal or formal assessment. What's the difference between formal and informal assessment? Now, formal assessment is basically objective and informal assessment is subjective. For example, if you have a science test, okay, take the example of your science test. There are 5 questions, and if you have answered all the 5 questions correctly, means it's just a one-word answer, so there will only be a one-word answer to each question. So if you've answered one question correctly, then you will get 1 marks. That means each student will be judged, will be marked on the same basis. But in informal, you take the example of an interview. Okay, so here the interviewer will ask you a question. What if interviewer B asks me a question and interviewer A asks another person in opinion? So I will be assessed based on the prior experiences, the prior stereotypes of the first interviewer, and my friend will be assessed based on the experiences, biases and stereotypes of another interviewer. So they will come a difference in our assessment, they will come a difference in the judgment. So here it is informal. It's subjective. Subjective means it differs from person to person, but here it is objective, means if it is true, then you will get a marks. If it is not true, if it's not correct, then you will not get a marks. Formal tests are objective and standardized. Standardized, what does it mean? That if it is correct, you will get 1 marks or whatever marks that question is of. If it's wrong, you will not get any marks. And it is organized. So on the other hand, informal assessment, it varies from case to case, as we understood from the example of an interview, and from one assessor to another, and therefore is open to subjective interpretations. Psychologists are trained in making formal assessment of psychological attributes, means they take the help of scientific methods and they look for verifications as well as proofs to support their claims. Second is prediction and intervention. Once assessment is done, we can use this information to predict how Harish will probably behave in the future. We may predict that Harish, if given a chance to lead a team, will most likely be an authoritarian leader. So here, from the above, we saw that Harish is dominant. We saw the proof that Harish was dominating over his, over his younger brother. From that, we made a conclusion that Harish is dominant. So this information we have made this inference that how Harish will probably behave in future, means Harish will most likely be an authoritarian leader. In the same way, if we see that Meera helped her younger sister in mathematics. Okay, So from this statement, we can conclude that Meera is a helpful girl. That's the attribute that we have concluded. And we can make this future inference that in future, Meera will probably be a helpful individual, and she will help anyone who approaches her or anyone whom she can help. If the predicted consequence is not what we want, we may want to intervene to effect a change in Harish's behavior. So if the result is not the same, if Harish doesn't turn out to be an authoritarian leader, then we must intervene to effect a change in Harish's behavior. Third is, what's the purpose of our assessment? What's the purpose? Why are we actually assessing the psychological attributes? What profit will it give us? The attribute chosen for assessment depends upon our purpose. In order to help a weak student perform well in examination, we may assess his intellectual strengths and weaknesses. If a person fails to adjust with the members of his or family and neighborhood, we may consider assessing his or personality characteristics. Okay. So in an examination, if you have a math test, so here the teacher is assessing what are the topics that you have fully understood and what are the topics that you lack certain understanding. So here the teacher is assessing the certain topics, okay, certain abilities that you have. If in maths you have certain numerical ability, in English she is testing your verbal ability. So here she is assessing that what are your strengths and weaknesses, so that she can help you to improve that. So So that's the whole reason of assessment, that it will help a person improve his or her performance. Now, our next topic is intelligence. We are going to understand what intelligence is. We are going to understand what are the theories of intelligence. We are going to understand the different definitions of intelligence that have evolved, starting from Alfred Binet and how that definition evolved, and now what is the final or the latest definition we have of intelligence. Intelligence is a fundamental concept in psychology that is used to understand how individuals differ in their cognitive abilities. What do you mean by cognitive? Cognitive basically means your thinking capacity. आपके सोचने की क्षमता, आप कितनी जल्दी सोच सकते हैं, आप कितनी जल्दी अपना mind work कर सकते हैं. How they adapt to their environment, that how fast you're able to think, how fast you're able to respond to a situation, and how fast you're able to adapt to your changing environment. The common understanding of intelligence often focuses on attributes like mental alertness, quick learning, and problem-solving skills. However, the psychological perspective of intelligence is more nuanced and multifaceted, encompassing various theories and approaches. So now we are going to study what are the various theories that we have on intelligence. The first is Alfred Binet unifactor theory. Now, Alfred Binet, a pioneer in intelligence research, proposed a simple theory that intelligence consists of a single set of abilities used for solving problem. This theory, known as the unifactor theory, was based on his work in differentiating individuals based on the intelligence level. So what does Alfred Binet says? He says that there is only a single kind of attribute, or there is a single kind of characteristics, okay, that an individual has, and if that individual has that characteristics, he is said to be intelligent. So, for example, अगर किसी पे वो quality है, then he is intelligent. नहीं है, तो नहीं है. There is no other factor. It's not multifaceted. एक single factor है. If that person has that ability, he is intelligent. If not, he is not intelligent. Second, we have Charles Spearman's two-factor theory. From one factor, we turn to two-factor. Now, Charles Spearman, building upon Binet's work, proposed a two-factor theory of intelligence. He suggested that intelligence comprises a general factor representing common mental operations and specific factors representing specialized abilities. This theory was based on statistical analysis using factor analysis. Okay, so what does it say? That each individual, it has a general factor. Okay, everyone has this general factor. Okay, but individuals differ in this S factor. Let me help you by explaining it with an example. For instance, there's an example given in book only that all the individuals have that general factor, but what differentiates a normal individual from an Olympic athlete or a world star singer is that the specific ability. The specific ability that they have in singing or in athletics is what is differentiating them from other individuals, and that is what helping them in excelling in their attribute. everyone has this general factor, but this is the special factor. Like someone would have a special factor in dancing. Someone will have a special factor in singing. So this is what makes them different. This is what helps them in excelling in that specific domain. Then we have the Louis Thurston's theory of primary mental abilities. Louis Thurston challenged the idea of single general intelligence, proposing the theory of primary mental abilities. He identified 7 independent primary abilities, including verbal comprehension, numerical abilities, spatial relations, perceptual speed, word fluency, memory, inductive reasoning. Okay, we need to understand it one by one. Okay. What does Louis Thurston says? Louis Thurston says, ना तो एक single ability है, ना ही सिर्फ 2 abilities हैं. We have a group of abilities. Basically, he says that we have 7 independent primary abilities. Independent means that they do not influence one another. They are separately, completely different from one another. So intelligence can be measured by these 7 primary abilities, and if an individual is said to have one or more of these primary abilities, he can said to be intelligent individual. First is verbal comprehension. Verbal means that how the individual is able to understand words, how he is able to use words. For instance, we can take the example of the poets, of the writers. They have a strong hold over words. They are able to use different kinds of words. They are able to use it creatively. They are able to use it in different ways. Second is numerical abilities. Numerical abilities is how you are able to solve numerical problems. Like mathematicians are said to have a good numerical ability, how you're able to comprehend different numerical problems, and so on. Next we have the spatial relations. Spatial relations, what does it mean is that how you're able to imagine things. Like if you're given a problem, like for instance you take the example of an interior designer. What does an interior designer think? He imagines. He or she does not draws or does not put the objects and different kind of furniture in places. They just imagine that how would the sofa look here, how would the scenery would look here. So it's like mental ability. You are able to imagine things in space. You're imagining in space and you are assessing that how well it is going, and you are evaluating it. So spatial means you're just imagining and how you're putting things in place. Next we have perceptual speed. Perceptual speed, that how fast are you able to perceive things around you. You are perceiving, like if you see a bottle in front of you, that how fast you're able to perceive that bottle, and you're evaluating that why is it here, why is it here, what's the color of the bottle. You're thinking fast. Next is word fluency. Word fluency is how fast you're able to use the words. That you're speaking a sentence and how fast you're able to input the words in your sentence. Memory. Memory means that how able you are to understand things, and you're able to store things in your memory and also recall them when needed. Next is inductive reasoning. What do you mean by inductive reasoning? Inductive reasoning means that you are given certain statements, you are given information, 5, 6 or many information, and from that you're able to make a conclusion. Like for instance, you can take the example of a Supreme Court judge or any kind of judge. They are given so many statements, they are given so many evidences, and from that they come to a conclusion, and from that they make certain kind of judgment. So they are inductive reasoning. Okay. Inductive reasoning was wrong. Back. What do you mean by inductive reasoning? Inductive reasoning, we have 2 kinds of reasoning. We have inductive reasoning and we have deductive reasoning. Here Louis has talked about inductive reasoning. What does inductive means? That there is just one and you've like multiplied it. And what does deductive means? That there are many and it just results in one. Okay. So inductive reasoning means you're given one statement, like if you're given one statement that I am a good boy, and then you are just able to form sentences along the same lines. You're just expanding. Like if you're given 2 lines, you're able to write a whole paragraph of that in your examination. You must have done that. If you don't know the answer, but like you know the heading, and then you are able to write the complete answer. That's inductive reasoning. And deductive reasoning is the same, that if you're given many kinds of information, like for a Supreme Court judge, he's given so many evidences, he's given so many information, and from that he's able to make one single conclusion. So that's a difference between inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. And here Louis talks about inductive reasoning, that the individual is able to expand certain kind of information. He is able to explain it in a much more better and expressive manner. Next theory is Arthur Jensen's hierarchical model. Arthur Jensen proposed a hierarchical model of intelligence distinguishing between 2 levels of abilities. We have level 1 and involving associative learning, and level 2 involving higher order cognitive competence. This model emphasizes the distinction between basic learning and more complex learning. So what does Arthur Jensen has given us? We have level 1 and then there is level 2. Level 1 is basically about basic learning, and level 2 is about complex cognitive skills. I'll explain you with the help of an example what does level 1 means. Okay, so you have your SST examination. Okay, you have learned certain kind of answers, you've learned certain dates, and the next day you just write everything. You just write everything that you have learned. That's just basic learning, and that's what you call rote learning. Okay, that's just rote learning. जो आपने पढ़ा है आप वैसा ही कि वैसा लिख रहे हैं. What's level 2 learning? It's complex cognitive skill. Level 2 learning is that, for instance, you have English language paper in which you have to write you have to write an essay. So there are certain common topics that you can study about. You can read about technology, you can read about environment, because the essay topics usually come from around those domains only. You can study about different, what the words that you can use to express your feeling better in a narrative composition. And then when the final examination comes, the topic is kind of related, but it's not exactly the same that you've studied. So here you will be using a complex cognitive skill. Complex cognitive skill means जो आपने पढ़ा है उसके अलावा आप अपना और ऐड कर रहे हैं, आप उसे और explanatory बना रहे हैं. That you're using your cognitive skills, you're not just writing what you have remembered earlier. Okay, so it's a higher order cognitive competence. It's just level 1 is associative learning. Associative learning, it's rote learning, it's just basic learning. You've learned that कि ऐसा होगा तो ऐसा आएगा, ऐसा होगा तो ऐसा आएगा. But no, here you have to think more deeply, you have to think more creatively. Next we have J.P. Guilford's structure of intellect model. J.P. Guilford's structure of intellect model classifies intellectual traits along 3 dimensions. We have operations, there are contents and products. This model provides a comprehensive framework for understanding the various aspects of intelligence encompassing a wide range of cognitive abilities. So J.P. Guilford, he said that there are many kind of attributes and many kind of abilities, and that he has divided into 3 categories. We have contents, operations and product. Content basically means, if you are thinking, what is the content that you are receiving, what's the information that you are receiving. The information can be in the form of visuals, what you're seeing, pictures, movie, anything. Auditory, what you're hearing. Symbolic, any object that symbolizes something. Semantic and behavioral. Like for instance, like in a classroom, okay, what's the content that you have? Your teacher is teaching you, that's a visual, she's teaching you, she's drawing certain things on the board, she's speaking, so that's auditory. You have your books with you, so these are the contents that you have. Second is operation. Operation is what you actually do with that information, with that content. You can use it for cognition, memory recording, memory retention, divergent production, convergent production and evaluation. Cognition means thinking ability. Memory recording is whatever you are seeing, whatever you are trying to learn, you are able to record it in your memory. Memory retention, एक बार record हो गया, then how you are able to retain it, how long you are able to retain it. Next is divergent production, as I explained earlier, कि आप पे एक line है और आप उसे बहुत लाइन में डिवाइड कर पा रहे हैं. Like you just have a one line, you just know the heading of an answer and you're able to expand it into a complete 5-page answer. That's divergent production. Although I am exaggerating it, I do not mean a 5-page answer. I just meant that if you know a paragraph, you're able to fill the complete answer sheet. Second is convergent production. That you have so many information, but आपको आंसर एक लाइन में ही देना है. So that's convergent production. Divergent and convergent, as you have studied in physics. Last is evaluation. Whatever information you have given, you are able to evaluate it. You are able to see the positive and negatives of it. And lastly, we have products. ठीक है, कंटेंट मिला, उसके साथ हमने ऑपरेशन किया, उसके साथ जो जो प्रोसेसेस करने थे हमने वो किए, एंड फाइनली यू गेट द प्रोडक्ट. व्हाट डू यू एक्चुअली, सो प्रोडक्ट कैन बी इन द फॉर्म ऑफ यूनिट, क्लासेस, रिलेशंस, सिस्टम्स, ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन एंड इम्प्लीकेशंस. ओके, सो वट एवर इवेल्युएशन यू मेड, उसके हिसाब से आप क्या क्या ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन लाना चाहते हैं, क्या क्या इम्प्लीकेशन, क्या क्या आपने फाइनली कंक्लूड किया. लाइक फॉर इंस्टेंस हम हरीश का एग्जाम्पल लेते हैं, तो स्टार्टिंग में वी सॉ दैट हरीश वॉज डोमिनेंट. ओके, Harish is dominant. That was the implication that we made. What is the content that we got? We got the visual and the auditory content that Harish was dominating over his younger brother. Okay? Operation क्या किया? हमने evaluation क्या की? हाँ, if Harish is dominating over his younger brother, then he must be dominating over other little children as well. Then finally we made the implication, we made the conclusion that yes, Harish is a dominant boy. Next, we have the Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence. Howard Gardner proposed the theory of multiple intelligence. According to him, intelligence is not a single entity. Rather, distinct type of intelligences exist. Each of these intelligences are independent of each other. This is very important that he says that they are independent of each other. This means if a person exhibits one type of intelligence, it does not necessarily bring a high or a low on other type of intelligence. Gardner also puts forth that different type of intelligence, they interact and work together to find a solution to a problem. Gardner studied extremely talented persons who had shown exceptional abilities in their respective areas and described 8 type of intelligence. So he has described 8 type of intelligence. First is linguistic intelligence. As you can understand from the word linguistic. Linguistic means language. Linguistic intelligence involves the ability to use language fluently and flexibly, including understanding and expressing complex idea, creating linguistic images and mastering different forms of language. Linguistic ability is basically your mastery on language, कि आप कितने अच्छे से language को समझ पा रहे हैं, आप कितने creatively language को use कर पा रहे हैं. This we can take the example of poets, we can take the example of writers. Okay. Complex ideas, creating linguistic images, and how you're able to also express yourself verbally. Then we have logical and mathematical intelligence. Again, logic, mathematical problems basically. Encompasses ability to think logically, critically and abstractly, solve mathematical problems and manipulate symbols to represent relationship and patterns. Basically, mathematician or your maths teacher, they have this logical and mathematical intelligence, and you study basically maths and you are also giving your general test. So you're giving a general test. Why? Because the examiners, they want to assess your logical as well as your mathematical intelligence, because it does contain question apart from the GK and other questions. It does contain logical and a mathematical part. Next we have spatial intelligence. It involves ability to form, use and transform mental images, including visualizing. That is what I explained earlier, visualizing. Okay, imagine a interior designer, or you imagine you imagine an architect. So they are visualizing patterns, navigating spaces and representing the spatial world in the mind. So they are spatial world, they are imagining all this. So that's the ability, spatial intelligence, you are imagining it. Next we have musical intelligence. Of course, musicians would have this intelligence, as it is quite clear. Refers to ability to produce, create and manipulate musical patterns. Example, you take A.R. Rahman, you take Yashraj Mukhate, how they're able to use different kinds of chords, they're able to use different kind of music and instruments to create a beautiful melody, including recognizing and appreciating different sounds, rhythms and melodies. Next there is bodily and kinesthetic intelligence. It involves the ability to use the whole body or parts of it flexibly and creatively, including performing physical tasks, expressing oneself through movement and coordinating body movements. You take the example of a dancer. That how creatively, how flexibly a dancer is able to use his or her body. So that's called bodily and kinesthetic intelligence. You take the example of a dancer, you take the example of a gymnast. Okay, they're able to use their body flexibly and creatively. It can be either whole body or a part of it. Okay, and physical task, expressing oneself through movement and coordinating body movements. Next, there is interpersonal intelligence. Now, interpersonal, what do you mean by interpersonal? It's between two persons, 3 persons. It can be interpersonal. Encompasses the ability to understand and relate to others, including recognizing and interpreting their emotion, motives and behaviors, and building effective relationship. How able you are to understand the other individuals, किसी के साथ problem हो रही है, how well you are able to understand that, how able you are to sympathize with that person, empathize with that person. So this basically assesses what's your intelligence, what's your ability to behave in a social relationship. Next, there is intrapersonal intelligence. That was inter, that's intra. Intra means inside. It involves the ability to understand oneself, how well you are able to understand oneself. This was all about the other person, the relationship between the other person, but here we are talking about oneself. You're recognizing your own emotions, motives, desires, using self-knowledge to guide behavior and relationship. How well you're able to understand what do you actually want, what do you actually feel at that moment. So people who excel in that, they're able to handle things very good. So first you need to understand and you need to get in touch with yourself before going to interpersonal level. Then we have naturalistic intelligence, which is already known. Natural basically relates to nature, how well you are able to understand, how well you are able to identify different species, understanding ecological relationships, and appreciating the beauty and complexity of nature. So that was that theory. The theories, they are a very important part in psychology. So if you want to excel in your class 12 board examination perspective, the theories, you need to learn the entire theory step by step and everything. For CUET, क्या याद करना है? Who gave the theory? What are the different components of it? And basically they'll ask you application based questions that they'll give you a sentence and they'll say कि इसमें कौन सा kind of intelligence imply हो रहा है? Like just I said that the dancer used her body creatively and flexibly. What kind of intelligence is that? So you will say it's a bodily kinesthetic intelligence that the dancer possesses. So these kind of questions is the one that you will get. Next we have Sternberg's triarchic theory of intelligence. Robert Sternberg proposed the triarchic theory of intelligence. Sternberg views intelligence as the ability to adapt, to shape and select environment to accomplish one's goal and those of society and culture. That's a definition which is given by Sternberg. You can quote this definition, although you will not get such definition in your CUET examination. They will not ask you that who said this definition, but it's very important to understand the concept. The ability to adapt, how well you are able to adapt to your environment, to its changing environment, to shape. Okay? If you're not able to adapt to the environment, how well you are shaping it. अगर आप घर से हॉस्टल आ रहे हैं तो हॉस्टल में आप कैसा अपना एनवायरनमेंट चेंज कर रहे हैं कि ताकि वो आपको और वेलकमिंग लगे, तो आपको और अच्छा लगे. सेलेक्ट एनवायरनमेंट टू अकम्प्लिश वंस गोल. सेलेक्ट एनवायरनमेंट टू अकम्प्लिश वंस गोल, वही एनवायरनमेंट कि इफ़ यू वांट टू do better at study, so you are hanging out with students who are more inclined towards study but also towards certain kind of fun also, but एक आप environment choose कर रहे हो, that will help you in accomplishing your goal of those society and culture. According to this theory, there are 3 basic types of intelligence: componential, experiential and contextual. Okay, this is a very kind of an interesting theory. Okay, और इससे application based question आएंगे, हर theory से application based question आएंगे. So with the help of an example, you need to understand each and every theory, and that will also help you to understand it in a much better way. First we have componential intelligence, which is basically known as a book smart theory. Basically जिनमें ये होती है उनको book smart बोला जाता है. Componential intelligence, also known as analytical intelligence, involves the ability to analyze information, solve problems, and think critically. It encompasses three components: knowledge acquisition, meta components, and performance component. Component intelligence वही होता है कि जो आपको information मिलती है, how well you are able to analyze it, how well you are able to use that information. Okay, and it basically known as analytical intelligence की analyzing aspect basically ये focus करता है, and it has three important components. We have knowledge acquisition. Okay, there is knowledge acquisition. The first component. What do you mean by knowledge acquisition? For instance, take the example of a classroom. Your teacher is teaching you. You are getting knowledge. You're getting the knowledge. You're getting the information. Okay, that's the first step. Second is that's gain information. Second is meta component. Meta component. Okay, what does the meta component means? Meta components mean planning. ठीक है, अब आपकी टीचर ने आपको पढ़ा दिया एंड नाउ शी डिक्लेयर्स दैट यू हैव अ टेस्ट द कमिंग मंडे. तो अब आप प्लानिंग करेंगे दैट हाउ आप फर्स्ट डे क्या पढ़ेंगे, सेकेंड डे क्या पढ़ेंगे, सो दैट यू आर वेल प्रिपेयर्ड फॉर द टेस्ट ऑन मंडे. दैट फर्स्ट डे यू विल कंप्लीट द फर्स्ट पेज, सेकेंड डे यू विल कंप्लीट द सेकेंड एंड थर्ड पेज. सो हाउ यू आर प्लानिंग, ठीक है, अपने अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ टाइम, अपनी क्या क्या आपको पहले से पता है, उसके हिसाब से आप प्लानिंग करेंगे कि ठीक है मैं ये करूँगा, फिर ये होगा, फिर ये करूँगा, तो ये होगा, एंड मंडे तक मेरा पूरा कंप्लीट हो जाएगा सिलेबस. दैट्स अ सेकेंड कॉम्पोनेंट. एंड थर्ड इज द परफॉर्मेंस कॉम्पोनेंट. What does the performance component holds? ठीक है, टीचर ने पढ़ा दिया, आपने एनालाइज कर दिया, आपने प्लान कर दिया. What's the last component is the performance component. When you actually give the test, that's like the complete, the climax of it all. So that's the actually doing it. Okay. So ये componential intelligence है कि ठीक है पहले आपने तो three components. First you get the information, ठीक है आपने information कर दिया, आपने retain भी कर दिया information. Second you are planning it कि how you would actually execute it. And third कि finally आप वो कर पा रहे हो कि नहीं कर पा रहे हो. If you are able to excel in all these three dimensions, these three domains, so you are said to possess componential intelligence. If you look at the example here is that Emma always scores high on standardized tests because of her ability to evaluate and analyze materials using abstract thinking in order to achieve solutions. Okay, so she has the ability to analyze and evaluate the questions and the information. So she is said to have a higher componential intelligence. Next we look at the experiential and creative intelligence. I want you to focus on the word creative and also experiential. Experiential from the word experience, and creative intelligence. Experiential intelligence, also known as creative intelligence, involves the ability to use past experiences creatively to solve novel problems and generate new ideas. It reflects the ability to integrate different ways of experience in original ways. This can be understood with the help of this example. It's a very beautiful example. James Bond is a person high in creative intelligence because of his ability to use the knowledge and skills to deal with new problems every time. ठीक है, अब जेम्स बॉन्ड को क्रिएटिव पर्सन इसलिए बोला जा रहा है क्योंकि उसकी ज़िंदगी में in his everyday life what all problems are coming into his life, like कभी कुछ हो रहा है, कभी कुछ हो रहा है. So he is able to think creatively and bring solution to all these problems with the help of past experiences. Okay, so creatively involves the use of past experiences creatively to solve novel problems. ठीक है, यहाँ पे क्या है, standardized test है. स्टैंडर्डाइज्ड टेस्ट का मतलब क्या हुआ कि इफ़ इट्स गिवन 4 + 4 इसका आंसर 8 ही होगा. दिस इज कॉल्ड बुक स्मार्ट वाला इंटेलिजेंस, दैट्स व्हाई इट्स कॉल्ड बुक स्मार्ट. बट हेयर यहाँ पे नॉवली प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है. ठीक है, वेयर इट्स रिटन we have involves novel problems which has never happened in one's life before. James Bond की life में if you see James Bond movie ऐसा normally नहीं होता है, so he would not actually have. यहाँ पे तो पहले से prove हो रखा है कि 4 + 4 8 होता है, but this is the novel problems. So with the help of past experiences, with the help of information he has, with the help of the resources that he has, you're able to think about the solutions. So this is called experiential or creative intelligence. Last we have contextual intelligence. Contextual intelligence is also known as practical intelligence. Involves the ability to adapt to environment demands. I want you to focus on the word adapt. Select favorable environment. modify existing environments to meet one's needs. It's often referred to as street smarts or business sense. Contextual means context. Context means उस time क्या हो रहा है, क्या environment है, what are the people, who are the people there, क्या time चल रहा है. Contextual intelligence. It's called practical intelligence, the ability to adapt to environmental demands. कि environment क्या demand कर रहा है आपसे, you're able to meet that. You're able to select favorable environment and you're able to modify existing environment to meet one need. Just like I said that if you are shifting from your school to a boarding school, or you're shifting to a PG, how well you are able to adapt to the new situation, how well you're able to choose your friends who will, not only provide you fun but will also provide you the information, the help you need. So you are choosing the environment, you're choosing the environment favorable manner so as to achieve your goal, and you're also modifying the existing environment. Modifying the existing environment means, you're modifying the existing environment means how homely you're making the new PG room. If we look at the example, is that Johnny is considering buying a second-hand motorbike. A salesman, being a salesman, would obviously try to con the buyer, but Johnny is already prepared with price comparisons and has made up his mind to say no to unnecessary extras. So Johnny here is having high contextual intelligence. He already knows what will happen in that showroom. So he has already come prepared with his list of comparative prices. So he will not let the salesman take advantage of his situation, and he will say no to every answer. So he is said to have higher contextual intelligence.